In this week's episode, we take a deep dive into the Quarterfinals Prep program for Hatchet athletes. We talk about Phase 4 for MFT athletes. So if you are looking to peak for the Open or Quarterfinals, or you're looking to follow a dedicated program that's going to get you ready for semifinals prep, head to misfitathletics.com. January 9th, you get a 2-week free trial to really sort of digest all of the information you're about to hear. So throw those headphones on, grab a pen and a piece of paper, start taking some notes. Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into a special edition Misfit podcast. Full Goon Squad in the house.
Yo.
What's up?
If you're used to listening to us talk about chips and
Breakfast
athlete
items.
IQ
Don't
and
fucking tell me we're not going to talk about chips.
Hold on.
Okay.
And how fired up Hunter gets about your squat depth. This one is a little bit different. We're going to be digging into the programming that we have coming up. And this one's especially exciting because it's the time of year that the different programs sort of split off and prepare for the specific things that they do need to prepare for. But we need to we got a lot to cover in this podcast, so we'll be fairly quick. But we just had one of the bigger food weekends of the whole year.
Right.
And I'm just going to need some notes. I got to hear, I know you said you gained 14 pounds a day for a week.
Lean muscle.
It's all lean muscle.
We just got to kick it off with a little holiday cheer, a little food talk. What do we got? What happened? That was great.
I had filet mignon and prime rib 2 back-to-back nights.
Yeah, you
So
did.
that was pretty fucking tight.
Yep.
And prime rib. So I was like, first of all, my mom got a 13-pound prime rib for 4 people.
That's small.
Yeah. And I was like, Mom,
Your mom's
What the
one-upping my story.
yeah,
Like,
well, it's
damn.
like bone in. So it's like, all right, 12 pounds. It's like, yeah, perfect, Ma. 3 pounds per person, including you.
That doesn't seem like
respectfully,
enough.
Okay.
That doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah. And I was like, how the fuck? And then the other was impressive was like, how much was that fucker? And like that time of year, Hannaford on sale was like $5.99 a pound for prime, like USDA prime meat. It was really fucking good.
I got my 5-pound beef tenderloin at Whole Foods, and it was not $5.99.
Yeah.
That sounds about the price.
the case.
$59.99 a pound.
Move a decimal over.
I mean, I just had cookies with every meal. I had cookies for breakfast, cookies for lunch, cookies for dinner, cookies for after
Fucking
cookies.
Santa Claus over here, just
Yeah, I'm being Santa Claus. I gotta take a bite
breaking
of the
into
cookie.
people's houses and stealing cookies and milk.
Yeah, no. I mean, my family is really into the comfort food type of thing for holidays. So there's lasagnas and stromboli, which is
Plural?
stuffed bread. Yes, plural.
Lasagnas?
Yeah, with an S on the end. And then you got the
That's a whole new world.
stuffed bread, stromboli.
I need
You
to take
make
a time
that.
out.
Pigs in a blanket, that type of stuff.
Okay.
A lot of baked goods. I ate a lot of flour the last 4 days. So I'm
That was
basically the
quite
Pillsbury
that
doughboy.
That was quite the spread. You threw in pigs in a blanket in there too. You guys go
I'm
IHOP?
from Wyndham. That's
Oh,
like a
okay.
staple of our diet. If you don't eat pigs in a blanket once a week, you die.
Unless there was a crock pot with cocktail weenies in it, it doesn't count.
they were sweet and sour meatballs
Okay,
in a crock
yeah.
pot. So
Same thing,
yes.
same
Yeah,
thing.
Same thing. So
Frozen sweet and sour.
Yeah, I was going to say, but
meatballs,
you can't make
pigs in
those
a
meatballs,
blanket.
right? Someone bought them and dumped them in.
yeah, they're a bag.
All right,
They come in a bag.
I'm just making sure.
Yeah, I think Betty Crocker made them 1986.
Yep.
Been frozen in a vault since. They unthawed them. We cooked them.
How about you, Ted? Anything good?
No real food events yet because family got the Rona bug. So
We had a food event last night.
Well, we did have a food event last night. That's true. We had
That beef was the truth.
we had family dinner and it was better today. So
Oh, was it?
Next time I'm gonna make it a day ahead. But
All right.
we made some barbacoa, some pulled chicken, some spicy scrimps.
Suck me. He said it was
Yeah.
better today. Suck me.
It was still really good.
didn't have any either.
Yeah, but this coming weekend is the Christmas celebration where
Okay.
we'll have the whole shebang.
It's probably good then that Hunter, had something going on yesterday evening, so he couldn't come over and eat all the chicken you'd eat today. Because last time we had to get together at your house, someone put down 5 to 12 pounds of chicken
Body weight
by
in
himself.
Listen, guy, I like to snack.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I like to
Tell me
snack
how
over
many
the
plates
course
of
of an
chicken?
evening.
It was one of the more epic
have a-
eating sessions I've ever witnessed in my
Kids get a
entire life.
tapeworm.
That's why.
And you would return from that trip and you said the food wasn't great and you didn't eat that much. You were,
He put all the calories down he missed
Yeah.
for a whole week.
that was impressive.
True.
Like 90 minutes of nonstop.
We're just sitting at the
food in
table
mouth.
shooting the shit for like a good 90 minutes to 2 hours, and Hunter was eating tacos for the entire period.
Listen, I paced myself.
It was impressive.
Also, why I
It was
even have
impressive.
kept my MyFitnessPal subscription.
Yeah, can you
That
pull
is
up that day?
help.
Can we go
No,
back in history
I
and find
can't.
that day?
No.
Kid ate fucking 850 grams of protein.
When I first started doing that, Caroline was like, I told her about a day where I had like 5,000 calories and like almost 200 grams of fat, and she was like, "There's no fucking way."
That's
and
way off the number I
up.
said.
I think it was over logged, but it was still like even like 50% of that would be pretty impressive.
We brought that up last night, and I was like, yeah, he said he had like 600 to 800 grams of fat. So
Well, that meal where you had
God.
10 tablespoons of fat was impressive.
Well, to be
Alone.
fair, I counted all of the oil that I used as like marinade, so I didn't probably eat 5 tablespoons of olive oil, but maybe I did.
Maybe you
maybe
did.
I did.
Maybe
Never know.
you
But
did.
look
Your
at me now.
Look at me now.
Look at me now.
He was.
Look at me now, Ted.
So Christmas Eve was one Christmas for me, and we did brunch. So pretty standard fare, other than my brother did. He cured a brisket for a week in like corned beef spices and then did that on the smoker. So it was corned beef hash, but like the best corned beef hash I've ever had.
Good corned beef hash.
Yeah. Like non-dry
I gotta go.
corned beef. And then on Christmas, I did a 5-pound tenderloin on the smoker, and I can't believe I didn't take pictures. I don't think
Can happen.
I don't think
Just
could be
all
cooked better.
Smoked. Like-
so. You do 250 degrees up to 110. You pull it, you let it rest,
Yeah.
and then you can, if you have the ability. I mean, the thing was like 14 feet long, so
Right.
I didn't really have a way to sear it without like
Dinosaur
cramming it
tail.
into a pan. So I put the smoker up to 500 and did like a few minutes per side, just
Ass
sort of rolled
blasted
it,
rolled it around.
rolled it around, and it was perfect
That sounds pretty good.
all the way through. Absolutely perfect. And I found that one of my new favorite meals is macaroni and cheese, mashed potatoes, and beef tenderloin.
That sounds
It was
freaking
something.
good.
You mix it up all together.
Oh,
Whip it into a
KFC
I'm not.
famous bowl?
I'm not a big mixer. I do like a little potato on the beef. I can handle that, but I'm a
I'm the
little
opposite.
weird
I'm
about
making a big
like.
slop pile. I'm making a slop.
Put it in a trough and just
Yeah.
mash it
Just put
together.
my face right
I've
there. Use
also come
utensils.
full circle on horseradish. When I was a kid, I thought it was the most disgusting. Like I thought it tasted like soap. I
Yeah.
could not handle it at all. And I made a sauce with horseradish for the beef.
So good.
So good. Yeah.
Amazing.
Horseradish is the fucking
I'm
tits.
supposed to do something productive after this. All I want to do is eat now.
Yeah. I still have some tenderloin left at home.
In a
I
vault.
tell you, yeah, it's in the vault.
Tenderloin vault.
Luckily, I'm the only one in the house that eats that. The only thing that I would need to hide would be the cinnamon rolls. Oh yeah, I also made gluten-free cinnamon rolls
Ooh.
Christmas morning that were amazing.
We did cinnamon rolls in the morning too. We usually do. My grandma had a fried ricotta donut recipe, and they were the fucking tits. And my mom was like, "I want to."
Did you tell grandma that?
Grandma, these cinnamon rolls are the tits.
Yeah, she was like, she knew. She knew it was up.
Yeah, boy.
Just crip walking. Making the
No
dough.
bussing. Grandma, for real, no bussing.
for real, grandma. Oh man. All right, are we ready?
I guess we can get.
All right, let's get into it.
But
So, as I teased in the opener, we have the time of year where our different programs start to split off and address very specific goals. So your age group, and this is, I would say, 8 to 9 out of 10 of our age group athletes, semifinals and games athletes are going into phase 4 under MFT. And it's really important to us that for at least another 7 weeks, we get that final block of time where the athletes can really sort of hone in on everything that they're going to need to go into, just sort of follow the rest of the progression to go into semifinals prep. All open and quarterfinals athletes will be on the Hatchet Quarterfinals Prep program. This is the very first time that sort of in terms of the naming conventions and explicitly putting it out there that we are saying we have a completely separate peaking schedule for Hatchet athletes. And I'm really excited about this. And we've addressed it in previous podcasts, but I think the majority of the CrossFit community slots into the open and quarterfinals athletes categories.
Yep.
And they don't get sort of the love and attention that they deserve, because at the end of the day, your goal is the most important one, the thing that you are trying to achieve. And if we get sort of shiny object syndrome and look out towards semifinals prep programs or games prep programs, then we're not addressing the fact that this is the most important time of year for you as an athlete. So quarterfinals prep program starts at the same time as phase 4 for MFT. And the Hatchet athletes, I mean, if you're already a Hatchet follower, there isn't a whole lot that you need to do other than what we're going to address in this podcast than to just, show up January 9th and get started on peaking for quarterfinals. And then, MFT athletes, you can expect sort of a similar type of schedule that you've been used to.
I think this is an opportunity for these athletes, the ones that are going to be in the Hatchet category, to eventually get a chance to see what it feels like to do a peaking schedule. Because for a lot of those athletes, they might have done it or followed along in the past with no real thing at the end of that peaking schedule that, like,
exactly,
in person, like they could go and do, the semifinals programming they saw if they picked their favorite semifinal and did it, but it's not quite the same thing as kind of peaking for your Super Bowl. So this is kind of the first year where we double down and let those athletes experience what it feels like to be, an Austin or a Caroline who is peaking for a semifinal with a goal of trying to get to the CrossFit Games. The opportunity to do that feels like for their version of this, their Super Bowl, which again should hopefully allow them to feel like they can take their day-to-day training and it's just turned up a little bit, and they can see how doubling down on a very specific amount of volume for a set amount of time can allow you to peak and then do your best at a competition with the goal of see what's possible in this year. Imagine if you did that a couple more seasons where you could be, and starts to kind of bridge the gap between I don't feel like semifinals are realistic this year, but in 2 or 3 years from now, they could be. And I want to know what it feels like to kind of go through that prep so I can basically be mentally prepared and physically prepared for it coming around in the future for me.
I think it's also good to maybe address who that is for. So Hatchet athletes, obviously if you're a regular follower of Hatchet, that's the case. But if you're either new or you're teetering on the line of oh, am I a semifinals athlete or am I a quarterfinals athlete? I would say that to an athlete asking that question, if qualifying for semifinals is in question, or if it's maybe you're in that bottom third of a semifinals pool or something like that, you should be all engines kind of forward on quarterfinals. Don't assume that you want to take the next 7 weeks kind of casually, thinking that you're getting into semifinals is a gimme, and you're yeah, I'll peak for my semifinal, without you have to be very, very confident that you would qualify for semifinals to be kind of eligible to not follow, to be in a good situation to not follow the Hatchet peaking schedule.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Basically, if you are following MFT right now, or you're following Hatchet and you sort of look back and forth at the other programs and you're trying to figure out exactly where you slot, this is the time of year where you stop doing that and you go to Hatchet explicitly. And, just to sort of build on what Sherb said, this idea of when we do a peaking schedule for an athlete, basically what we're doing is we're asking you to lock in on less stuff at the beginning of it, to really address how to attack in an individual workout and not a ton of workouts. How are you warming up for you? How are you cooling down? Are you taking the time to do your athlete IQ exercises where you sort of, really know no matter what workout gets announced in the online qualifier, how to attack it? Then we go into overreaching mode in the middle. We really sort of beat you up a little bit on purpose. And as we come back down in volume, those two ideas come together. You are fitter, you are stronger, you are more skilled, you are smarter about how you attack workouts, and that is sort of the runway that leads you into it. What's great about this is let's say you do the Hatchet Quarterfinals Prep this year and it sort of gets you to where you want to be, you have just practiced what it's like to really go all in on a peaking schedule. And, you know, maybe there is that jump that brings you next year to the MFT one, and it is for semifinals instead.
And I think we haven't got to this point yet, but when an athlete goes through this, there are going to be moments where you're questioning whether or not you can keep doing it, because a peaking schedule typically beats you up pretty good. We go through what something's called like a hell week. You'll have 1 week throughout the entire block that kind of prepares you for the absolute worst case scenario, basically gets you to a point where you're really beat down so that when you come back down the hill and you have lesser pieces, you recover and you basically what they call do super compensation, where you get fitter because you were beat down so far. Stick with the plan. Don't try to jump ahead or think about next week. Like, focus on what's in front of you for each day, each piece, each minute. And if you can stay focused on just doing exactly what you're asked to do every single day without adding more or getting lost in the weeds of like what's coming up, you can really make some noticeable change, but it's going to require both mental and physical focus to a level that you probably haven't done in the past. So like basically what I'm saying is buckle up for it, because it's going to be a little bit more than you're used to in terms of like what we are asking for, you know, in terms of like professionalism or like, you know, emulating the people that you idolize at the CrossFit Games. How can you create that same atmosphere for yourself for your Super Bowl like they do for their Super Bowl? This is that opportunity.
The only other thing I want to add is like, also understand, Hatchet athletes, that your highest volume is going to occur in the middle of the open. So it's important to keep in mind that we are not peaking you to perform your best in 23.1, 2, and 3. The assumption is that your fitness is enough that you are going to qualify. We're essentially looking to kind of use the open workouts as training pieces, probably with a higher intensity and kind of level of focus. And maybe you do have to only do that training piece or one other thing in that day, but understand that Fridays, like when we recommend doing the open workout, that's a normal training day and you are going to train through the open. There's no modifications or volume adjustments for that. The full kind of peaking schedule is going to make you be doing your highest volume in week 6 out of 8, which is in the I think it's week of 22.2 is like the highest.
And it's your best practice for quarterfinals as well. You can really get into the mode of getting yourself ready for that thing and getting into it and attacking it. Yep. The only asterisk to what Hunter just said is this is set up for both scenarios. So if you are a quarterfinals athlete, everything that he just said is correct. If you are an open athlete, basically the way that at that level that we're going to peak an athlete is we're going to give you a lift, a conditioning piece, an accessory work or skill daily. And you're going to everything's going to be sports specific. And we'll get into that here in a minute with all the programs and sort of how they break down. But as you go through, that original volume from the beginning of the peaking schedule stays the same for you. So if you are all in on the open, every single week, it's going to let you know in your pick category, it's going to say open athletes do 1, 2, and 3. Quarterfinals athletes do all. So that peaking program is present for both an open athlete and a quarterfinals athlete. They're all in there. And, you know, one of the things that's really important to us is to have sort of that community involvement. So you're still going to be on, like, it's not even to say a very similar program. It's the same program with less pieces built into that. So addressed it a little bit, but this idea of if quarterfinals or the open really does mean a lot to you, starting to acknowledge that you have about a week to get your ducks in a row. And that could be letting people know in your personal life that you're about to go all in on your peaking program and you are actually going to go to bed at the same time every single night. And like, I can go out to dinner, but I'm probably not going to have drinks with, whatever it is that allows you to take a 7 to 10 week period and what we call go pro. Like start to make those decisions, start to get everything lined up for yourself now. And I guess the degree to which you do this depends on what your goals are. Like if you are one of those people that's on the line sort of flirting with, if I get the right workouts and I really kick ass, then maybe I do end up at semifinals. The degree to which you do it is a 10 out of 10. And then somebody else who's like, I'm just a super competitive person, and this is what keeps me sort of fired up all year, is knowing where I place. You know, it's a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 in terms of the improvement on the decisions that you make when you're going into this. The other good thing about it with, you know, it might sound like, oh no, I only have a week to figure this out. Once we get into week 1, like we said, that is the lowest volume that you will have the whole time. So you can start to get into the rhythm of building those habits where you are doing the mobility work that you've been skipping. You are doing the longer warm-ups, both for lifts and for conditioning pieces. You're doing the cool down, so you're not going to be sore. And then each week, you're only going to be adding, you know, a piece here and there, sort of stacking on top of one another to get you to a point where you're like, okay, I've sort of greased the runway on this a little bit, and I know how I warm up and how I cool down, and, you know, what sort of time this takes, how much I need to be in the gym. Do I need to, you know, have a double session ready, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I like to think of this time of year as like the pluses and minuses. Like every single thing that you do leading up to the training session the night before, how you eat, are either, you know, positive things that are going to make you better the next day in training or going to make you worse at training the next day. And this is kind of a call to action to be hyper aware of all the little variables that could play into that. Like, you know, maybe you don't track your food and you decide, I'm going to track my food for a period. Or, you know, you're someone that chronically says that like your aches and pains are bothering you, but you don't pay attention to how you hydrate. These are things that like are small details that are going to allow you to perform better. And you need to be hyper obsessed with finding all of those 1% and trying to stack as many of those in your favor so that you can perform your best. Because again, if this is going to be your Super Bowl, this is when you need to be the most focused the entire year. And, you know, a lot of athletes try to dig into things like, all right, I'm going to watch a YouTube video to figure out why I can't snatch more weight, or I can't figure out like why my back squat won't get any higher. And sometimes it has nothing to do with your technique. It has to do with the other 1% things that you're not paying attention to. And this is the time where you can really dive in and, you know, honestly, before you do a piece, think about the things that you could have done better, do the piece, and then reflect and say what things could have been better, both with workout strategy, how you moved, what you did in the day leading up, the week leading up. All of these things compound together to make you the best version of yourself, and being able to pick them out and parse them out from other things that might not matter as much is an important skill for recognizing patterns, so that when you're like, man, wouldn't it be great if the first week of the Open, I go to do that workout and I felt as good as I did in week 2 when I hit this random interval piece. It's like, all right, how can I reverse engineer and figure out what I did before that interval piece that made me feel so good, and how can I then apply that to, you know, your Super Bowl or the first step on your journey to your Super Bowl?
Last but not least is this idea of continuing to lean on the community. So for anyone who is new to Misfit Athletics, for Quarterfinals Prep or Phase 4, you're going to have the connections that we try to keep in terms of any of the sport-specific lifts that are in MFT will also be in Hatchet. Conditioning pieces, bitch work pieces, all of this stuff. There is a, you know, scaled or modified version of this, you know, across all programs. So you have the ability to go into Discord. Discord's our online community, where, you know, it's free for anybody, discord.gg/Misfit Athletics. You can sign up for a free account. The coaches, all of us are on there. Everybody who follows Misfit Athletics is on there. And you can have these conversations within, you know, I'm talking to a Hatchet athlete, I'm talking to a Masters athlete, an MFT athlete. We can bring in all those people from a community-wide level, but then also your virtual training partners. So the people that are sort of going after something similar to you. One of the things that I really want to do with the Hatchet community during Quarterfinals Prep is get in there on Discord and get people sort of having these conversations. There's something powerful about what a community feel does to people in terms of motivation and buy-in and all that stuff. So while these people are your competitors, they are, you know, one of thousands of your competitors, and you'd probably want them to do well, more than maybe somebody outside of the program. So really lean into sharing your scores, talking about workout strategy, all that stuff in Discord. I think it's going to be really important and really helpful for everybody to do that, especially anybody that's on that Hatchet Quarterfinals Prep.
And I'd say that channel of all of the programming channels is probably the most lively in terms of that discussion and like, how'd you do this or how'd you break up that? And that's something I would challenge the MFT and the Masters group and the teens group specifically to use that to their advantage. And like, you know, you might be thinking that you're giving away the answer to the test, and all of a sudden that's how they're going to like beat you in the Open or beat you in quarterfinals or beat you, you know, wherever. But if you look at it in that light, what you're doing is you're creating a situation where you're not sharing information and you're not causing the entire community to get better. So if someone figures something out and they can make the entire community better by teaching that to everybody else, then you all get pulled along and get better. The person that was already figuring that stuff out now has to figure out another way to get better. And that is, again, going to drive the community to get better and better. So while you might feel like you're giving away secrets of, secret of the pros, like what you are doing is creating a new standard for what needs to be done through the community. And that the more that happens, the more everyone gets better, as opposed to being like, I'm going to keep the secret to myself because that's how I'm going to, get first in this workout. And it's like, that's great for one workout, but like, wouldn't you overall want to be fitter and reach further than just one single workout and one single thing? And I would think the answer is yes.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, right? On Monday, you're the standard setter.
Yeah.
And then on Tuesday, Hunter's the standard setter, and you need him. You need to know what is possible for that thing and vice versa. So if we go community wide, there's going to be that person that sort of arrives and does that for you. We've joked before that some of our higher level athletes will go all the way down every program and find like, I want to know this person's ski erg score, and then I want to know this person's, muscle up sets for whatever. Like, being able to know what is possible and then working incrementally towards it is super important.
Yeah, and I really do think that Discord channel, it's great that you put scores in there. Great, you make connections with people and try to get to know each other. Yeah. That's really important. But like, dive a little bit deeper, dig a little bit deeper into how you perform the way that you did, and hopefully you can maybe share something with somebody else, and then that can come twofold back to you when they share something to you down the road that you weren't thinking of, and all of a sudden, again, everybody gets better, which is one of the main reasons why that channel, Discord is so valuable to what we do every day, is that it's an opportunity for you all to learn from one another, which is, again, a huge part of what training is learning what you can and can't do and learning how to get better at what you are doing.
So to put a pretty little bow on this before we move on, if you are new to Misfit Athletics, January 9th, Quarterfinals Prep program begins. When you log into the website, you're going to see an option to be able to choose which program. Each day as you sort of log in, you see the view, you're going to want to click on Hatchet, and that's the day that program begins. If you are trying to peak for quarterfinals, if quarterfinals is really important to you this year, then you're going to follow sort of the quarterfinals athletes instructions that are going to be right there, very clear about what you're going to need to do. And then if you're trying to peak for the open, you're going to be on that same tab, that same program, and you're basically just going to follow the instructions for the open athletes. We are also putting in a lot more time and effort to make sure that the scaling and equipment modifications are there, so that if you are peaking for the open or you're working out in a garage gym, that we've really sort of got a dedicated program for you as well to figure out, how do I scale this? How do I modify my equipment if I don't have it, and still be ready to go in and attack the open or quarterfinals? Probably the biggest question for any age group athletes or MFT athletes while listening to this is like, when do we peak? What about us? MFT athletes are peaking for semifinals. There's the sort of the rare occurrence that an athlete wants to peak for the CrossFit Games instead. But if you are following Misfit Athletics and you are a semifinals athlete, we really, 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 really suggest that you have a remote coach at that level. That's sort of something that's going to completely separate you from other athletes who are of the same echelon as you, but don't have a remote coach. So that would be when you would get into, more ultra specific peaking. And then the age group athletes are sort of in between a little bit. Phase 4 is 11 weeks long for MFT athletes and only 8 weeks long for teens and masters. Your semifinals are just earlier, so your semifinals peaking program begins sooner. But for your sort of trip through the open this year, you're going to be on a very, very similar schedule to the MFT athletes. You're just going to begin that semifinals peaking process a little bit earlier because your dates are earlier.
Yeah, week 9, where MFT athlete will continue along the path of getting themselves ready for 3 more weeks of phase 4. The teens and masters are going to branch off and basically start their prep for Comp Block 1, which is, again, getting them ready for either quarterfinals,
semifinals prep,
or semifinals. Right? What'd I say?
Comp Block 1.
Oh, excuse me. Getting them. Mixing things up here, but getting them ready for that. And again, what we're going to do in the programming for teens and masters, if you look at that programming specifically, they're going to have a very specific amount of volume attached to what your goal is or where you think your Super Bowl is. And basically you will slot into like, either I'm trying to do really, really well in quarterfinals because that's probably going to be my Super Bowl and see how well I can do. Or I have a history where like, you know, I do pretty well in quarterfinals and I'm shooting to go back to the CrossFit Games or like trying to do my best at semifinals. And those athletes will have a slightly different instruction when it comes to volume, but overall kind of the same path. And we just think about like, when you're looking at the menu of items that are possible for an athlete to do at a semifinal for a teens or a masters, it's much more closer to like quarterfinals in terms of the equipment being used and the style of workout. So it allows us to basically narrow the focus just a little bit more than like something like games prep would be for someone who might have to climb pegboards or scale walls or, you know, do cargo nets, like that type of stuff, where we can kind of do more of the inside the gym stuff and just think about like, all right, we've got a couple of years of data on like what the season looks like.
Yeah.
And let's try to use that to inform the best possible plan to peak you so that you can either smash quarterfinals because that's the kind of athlete you are, or, you know, semifinals are kind of like your last ticket before you try to book your, you know, your plane ticket over to Madison.
So we're going to go into the sort of the weightlifting for both MFT and Hatchet. And we'll just address the nuances between, you know, what makes them similar and what makes them a little bit different. So your 1 rep max strength work is going to be the snatch. And there's kind of 2 scenarios here. One, you've been following Misfit Athletics previously, and you're just continuing down the path of peaking the lifts that we think are most appropriate for the current time in the season. And we basically spent, because the snatch is so skill focused, we wanted butted right up against, you know, sort of a competition season. And we have the ability to manipulate the sort of musculature that you would need to get better and the skill that you would need to get better, which we've been doing all year. The other scenario, you're new to Misfit Athletics and we're going to do it twice a week. And we're going to build, and doing it twice a week in the most skilled lift that we have is a really good idea.
It's also something that can make or break your season. We've seen plenty of athletes have this be the thing that holds them back, or be the one thing. Like they have a very high level of fitness, but because they aren't consistent with their mechanics, their snatch PR is like a random Tuesday in the gym where they heaved and prayed, dove underneath it, stood it up, or, you know, obviously stoked they got a PR, but it's nothing they can repeat over and over again. And that's unfortunately our sport, is that not only are you strong, but can you repeat high percentages of that over and over again on demand?
Yeah, I think that's a good change from previous years where it's like we have the twice a week of that and the clean or some like variant of it, just to make sure that athletes feel ready. Like you said, people like a lot of, so it sucks because it's always like, it's a conditioning sport. It's a conditioning sport. Don't worry about your 1 rep max. Don't worry about your 1 rep max. But there is that black and white line where it's like, if you can't snatch this, you will not go to the next level.
Yeah.
So anytime, I think it'll be good to, if nothing else, just confidence for athletes going into the competitive season with, you know, the 2 most technical lifts that we do.
We also just get the opportunity to make smaller, more thoughtful jumps when we have more opportunities for you to lift. So instead of jumping from 70% to 80%, you lifting at 70.
Yeah, a lot of times a 7 week progression, it's like that looks good and all the numbers look good on paper, but it's like that's 7 times, right? We're doing the lift 7 times, and if the expectation is to get better at it or to improve it, especially for this time of year and really refine it, I think it's necessary to have that second day, whereas maybe the rest of the year where it's more GPP.
Absolutely.
Emphasis.
So our speed / PAP work is going to be deficit deadlift, and it's box jumps, correct, Hunter?
Yep.
The seated box jumps. So basically we're at that time of year where we cannot donate your central nervous system. We can't rent it out for fun, for novelty, and we need to deadlift. So the way that we take care of that, we knock the percentage way down. But we still give you 30 reps, which is, a lot for a strength session. And we ask you to stand the bar up very fast. When we add the deficit, one of the things that can be really great about it is it forces athletes who are not good at using leg drive to move the barbell to do so. It is very hard in a deficit to, go full like master's beginner class clamshell, grip and rip, bent arm. It's very hard to do that from the deficit. It allows you to create a lot of tension and really drive through the floor and realize that, you know, the movement is the earth press, pressing the floor away from yourself as opposed to picking up a barbell. I can't stress enough that standing up is basically as fast as you can with good technique and then loading under control is the way to do this. Again, I've said it before. I think the deadlift is probably the safest one because deadlifts are just inherently heavy. But with these speed lifts, if you don't sort of bring the energy, if you don't bring the force application, they're not going to work in the same way. So when you see those sessions, really think about creating that leg drive. Take the extra second before each set to be like, all three reps, I'm going to get this. All right, Misfits, just a quick break to shout out our show sponsors and hopefully save you a little bit of dough on our favorite products. Holy shit, ladies and gentlemen, the return of the king. If you're watching on YouTube, the artist formerly known as Proper Recover is back in stock. It is a cool new name. It is an even cooler new packaging, but it is the same amazing product that everybody loves and everyone has been asking for quite a while when it's going to return. You can head to properfuel.co and use the code word Misfit to save on this bad boy. I am very excited that this is back.
Same. Been far too long.
It's everything that you need in a post-workout nutrition solution in one jug. Head to properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit. Proper Recover is back.
We're also super excited to bring another Quarterfinals Camp to Misfit HQ. That's going to be March 3rd. If you're looking to join us for 23.3, which we'd love for you to all join us. Last year, we packed the house here. We had everybody from Misfit Gym Portland, plus a handful of campers. And what better environment to kind of be a capstone on the open than getting all together and hammering that workout in probably the best training environment you could find to do the final open workout. But after that's done, Saturday and Sunday, the 4th and 5th of March, you can come in, you can learn from Hunter, Drew, myself, a bunch of athletes that are going to be in town who are also high-level competitors, and then basically take a deep dive into the training and the way you need to live your life if you're looking to do the absolute best you can at quarterfinals, because you have big dreams and big aspirations. And again, this is going to be the best atmosphere for you to learn as much as possible while also doing a lot of fun workouts and becoming a better and more well-rounded athlete. You can head to misfit.camp, get yourself signed up. This camp will sign out, so you better sign up soon or you're going to be SOL. Sell out, sign up. What day is it?
God damn it. I think we're going to have to do some impromptu rig repairs this year too.
Yes.
Just slicing rigs open. Last but not least, we are brought to you by Team Misfit Affiliate Programming. So if you've been listening to the first half of this podcast, if your affiliate's on the program, make sure you go back an episode or one or two episodes to listen to that Phase 4 podcast for affiliates. But it's also a great time to get your affiliate on board if you try to make that open kind of a fun community-based event, a culmination of the year, a year of hard work at your affiliate. We have structured Phase 4 a little bit differently than in previous phases to really make sure that you are that kind of your everyday affiliate athletes ready to do their best in the open, and then our competitor extra work every single day is very much geared towards that affiliate level athlete who wants to see kind of what they're made of when those quarterfinal workouts come up. So head to teammisfit.com or the SugarWOD marketplace to get yourself signed up. Costs less than a membership for you to have your entire gym's programming taken care of, so you guys can focus on things like the business, the community building, the coach development, all that sort of stuff. Again, teammisfit.com or the SugarWOD marketplace for that. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, one thing I would encourage you all to do with these deficit deadlifts, if you're a little uncomfortable with it or you don't do it all the time or you just don't have very much experience with it, is I would encourage you to set up a camera from profile and just watch the end of your bar cap as it goes off the floor to you full standing, and just ensure that you're getting as straight a line of action off the ground as possible, because what this deficit can do, if you're not someone who's very technically proficient in the deadlift, is exacerbate a bad problem of you're having your hips too high and your chest too far over the barbell, causing the bar to swing away from you. So if you're brand new to this, film yourself from profile and try to aim to, maybe find a landmark behind you that's nice and vertical, like a column in your gym or the squat rack, for example, and see if you can get your barbell to trace up that vertical line. Because again, we don't want to create any horizontal displacement of that barbell during this movement. And if this is done incorrectly, it'll just feel like hard deadlifts that don't actually translate to getting stronger. So definitely encourage you to do that if you're unfamiliar with the this type of deadlift.
And for athletes who might be concerned about like, fuck, that's a lift for me that's notoriously given me issues, because that is a lift that'll has the potential similar to
That's a
hitting
love-hate
snatch.
lift.
It's a love-hate lift for sure. There's
Love
still
it.
plenty of deadlifting in Metcons, which is obviously more, probably a little bit more probable for the open and quarterfinals, and we're still in that. We're getting towards the tail end of that progression, right? The deadlift,
Yes.
How long was it? 27 weeks? Was that with the skill?
Yep.
So there's still that, cardio feeling deadlift work that you've got mixed in. That
I'm really sad, but I think that's going to be the retest. I think that's what we're going to see.
the
that
burpee
again.
deadlift.
Yeah, I
Calling
really,
it?
I
I
hope so.
really fucking hope not.
I really
that was
fucking
some of the
hope
worst
so.
pain I've ever been in my life.
I love
but I
that
get a
fucking-
feeling
Nice 9-minute
that's my
cardio
guess.
session.
We didn't have one last year. And that, I mean, it will.
If it's not that, you got to get a tattoo of Hunter's face on your ass.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that seems about right.
What?
The same face that's on.
You want
Matt
to call
Lemon's
your
pants.
shot? You want to call your shot in December, kid?
I'm just getting ahead of the curve right now.
All right, all
We're gonna do
right.
that twice a week for the next 8 weeks.
Hot take. He names every workout once, so that's just a clip of him somewhere.
I wish we could dig up the old ones of Cody predicting them. Some of the predictions
Hear me
he had in
out.
the past were so
Roly
bad.
polies, bam bams, and
Cody's, they gotta do GHDs and rope climbs in the open. I
Legless.
feel it coming. Legless rope climbs, GHDs, and a 1,000
Yeah.
calorie
315 power
row.
clean.
for anybody who's wondering where Cody Mooney is, he said he'd come back and do the CrossFit Games if there was a no squatting category. He told us that last night, actually. So, all right. So our skill lift for MFT is the front squat to split jerk complex. And I'm going to say it now, and it's written this way, but you front squat and split jerk each time. I know that can be
I
challenging
just do it at the end, or do I do 7 split jerks after my 18th front squat?
We've noticed athletes having a better ability to stay connected to the barbell, and also just not have that feeling like, when you take a heavy split jerk out of the rack and you're like, is this like a Honda, is this a Honda Civic on my shoulders right now? Even when it's only 80%. And then when people take it out of the rack in a front squat, or they clean it first, a lot of times their central nervous system is aware of what's about to happen. So we find that works really well to get athletes moving better with the split jerk. If you don't have blocks, you get a few options here. Buy blocks. Have your friend make blocks.
They're not that expensive to make. They're pretty.
Or re-rack during these. What we don't want is an athlete to continue to create a bad position, especially one that has issues with shoulder or wrist mobility. I'd rather have an athlete put the bar back into the rack, re-rack it, take it out, and squat once we get into those. If it's a skill-focused lift, we need to be able to work on skill. There are not skill focus specific lifts in our peaking schedules. So Hatchet is going to be doing alternating weeks of heavy clean and jerks and heavy cleans. The cool thing about this is you are following the clean and jerk / clean peaking schedule from MFT semifinals prep. So this was already written for athletes to get ready for semifinals. And we just want to make sure that you're ready for any scenario. So on day 3, on Wednesday, every single week, you're going to be alternating back and forth between the clean and jerk and the clean. And again, if you're an MFT athlete, you've been sort of working through this progression all year. We're adding the split jerk in. And if you haven't, we're just making sure that you're getting exposure to heavy snatches, heavy cleans, and heavy clean and jerks.
Yeah, one of the things that really can throw an athlete off is just feeling like they haven't done something in a while.
Yeah.
Like that's a big reason why around the competitive season, you see us do more of what we call a GPP focus, where we rotate through different styles, just to give you some, the feel of like doing high rep and then really heavy, then moderate weight, moderate reps. So, this is an opportunity for you to not go through the motions and try to seek out, especially if you have an opportunity to do some of these things like you were just talking about the front squat to split jerk. Like, there are tons of athletes who can clean a house, can split jerk a house, but haven't figured out how to connect these two things. These sessions are really valuable for figuring out, like, is it my hand placement?
Could be the bridge to get you from
Exactly.
point A to point
It's what
B,
leaps you from, like, how come I can get these two things done separately really well, but I can't put them together? These sessions are really valuable in that regard. And again, use them to the fullest.
So we have a lifting category that we call GPP, and the non-coaching nerdy way of explaining GPP is it is a lifting program where you are not trying to guess how they're going to test your lift. So they could ask you to do a 1 rep max. They could ask you to do high rep. They could actually do touch and go or a complex, whatever it is. And we make sure that there's at least one lift during any of our training cycles throughout the entire year, whether it's, in competition, out of competition, where we are rotating through this. For MFT, that is going to be the back squat. So you're going to have heavy back squats. You're going to have speed days. You're going to have some weeks with more reps. You're going to have weeks with potentially a skill focus, which is really typically like tempo or pause work. And then a almost 1-to-1 swap in terms of sports specific for the Hatchet peaking schedule. It's just front squat instead of back squat. We need that barbell in the front rack. We need you moving it heavy. We need you moving it fast like you would in a Metcon. We need you to sort of check in on that skill component. And, it's still going to be heavy, but we're going to ask you to do things like tempo and pause with the front squat. So very similar sessions. But that barbell is going to be in the front rack instead of the back rack.
Just more sport specific. You had opportunity the entire season to get strong, and now it's like, can you take that strength that you developed and now have it translate to the skill?
It's a big aw shucks after phase 3, huh? That they can't back squat anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's
I don't think everyone's
disappointed.
that sad from what I've heard. It's pretty sad.
I think of and you also have to think it's not, again, we're not necessarily looking to improve your 1 rep max front squat. It's let's think about all of the other movements that will pop up that are essentially a front squat, whether it's a wall ball, a thruster, a front rack lunge, dumbbell power clean, dumbbell squat clean, movements like that we might see come up. It's less about improving the 1 rep max and more about just, like you said, the more sport specific nature of the lift.
I also love the messages proving my decade-long theory at the beginning of this, where if you realize that front squat is a skill and that you are good at back squat, that there is kind of a nice carryover there. So basically an athlete obsesses over their technique in the front squat after doing the volume cycle, and they get the DM like, front squats have never felt like this before. This is incredible. So we've built the legs, we've built the midline, we've gotten you into some really good squatting technique with the 5x5, 4x4, 3x3 over and over and over.
Especially been paying attention to how you move in that back squat. Because that was something that was a big focus for us. Our last phase podcast was like, hey, it's all good that you're squatting 3 times a week and you're going pretty heavy, but like, are you squatting the right way? And the comments that you get and the comments that I get, I'm sure you get them as well, are all like people who've both refined how they moved in a back squat, done all of their sessions, used a real max, not, this random day on a Wednesday when you squatted 500 pounds and you normally squat like 350, like use all those things and they kind of compound together, and all of a sudden these random front squat PRs happen, or quarterfinals, semifinals pops up, and all of a sudden you get called to do a heavy 3 rep max front squat or a 4 rep max or 1 rep max, and poof, there it is.
That reminds me, you get to find your 1 rep max snatch on January 9th. That is the 1 rep max snatch that you will be basing all of your percentage work on for the rest of the work. Do not go find the best one you've ever done in your entire life.
Yeah, I'll dig that up.
Yeah.
It'll take a while, but I'll find it.
Don't do
Found
it.
it?
Yeah, found it.
All right, found
Base
it.
There it is.
your max on the max that you got on January 9th.
The wind wasn't blowing right.
All right, so
Never is.
MFT athletes, phase 4, non-mandatory lifts. This is how you personalize at Misfit Athletics. We've got a lot of options for you on a day-to-day basis, be it strength, Metcon, interval, monostructural. You have opportunities throughout the entire week to personalize your program and get better at the things that you need to get better at. So we have alternating weeks of bench press and strict press. At this time of year, that is much more about shoulder health than anything else. So it's 60 reps. It's a 60 rep session on both sides. Choose a weight where you feel like that concept of keeping your shoulders healthy actually makes sense. If you try to blast yourself every single week, especially if you're really good at the chest trampoline, don't do it. Keep your shoulders healthy. It's the time of year where you don't want your shoulders blowing up. Misfit sets on front rack lunges. Anybody that is new to the program, Misfit sets are 4 even sets and then 1 max set. when it is a lift, the variable is going to be the weight. So we're going to choose your reps for you. We're going to say do 10 reps for 4 rounds. You're going to choose the weight, and then that weight you chose should be able to get you more than 10 reps in your final set. When you see it for gymnastics, the variable is actually your reps. We say do 4 even sets and then do as many as possible. But when it comes to barbell lifts, you sort of bring the variable in by choosing the weight on your own instead of the reps that you're going to achieve if you were doing, say, like muscle ups or something like that. Heavy days are back. We have this feels normal, I feel great, and this feels crunchy. I think those are the 3 options. Yep. And basically you're going to go in and I don't know, a little bit just is about testing your ability and your attitude towards having like a one-off heavy strength day when they hit you with that obscure lift and you're like, oh, I haven't done a heavy power clean in a while, or I haven't done a heavy overhead squat in a while, that sort of thing. Obviously it's heavy. It's anywhere from 80 to 90, 95% plus. So you are going to get stronger, but there really is something to honing in and, you know, getting that ability to just show up and lift heavy no matter what they ask, you know, what the lift is.
It's nice to give a little bit of variability to how you can personalize that session too. It's also good to like, everybody's had those days where it's like, wow, I feel like absolute garbage, and yet somehow I managed a PR or you know, kind of get like out. What's the fucking word? God damn it. I guess underestimated myself.
Sure. Yeah.
And then other days where it's like, man, I feel great. This is going to go up.
Yep.
No problem. And it doesn't. And then there's also just like, maybe I haven't done this in a while. What's my current capacity in this? What kind of feels heavy? What kind of feels light? Where's my kind of like baseline?
Yeah.
I was thinking the other thing about this too is like, think about last year's quarterfinals, and they had athletes do bench press, squat clean, and overhead squat, and athletes had no fucking clue how kind of jumps to make, how much time to allot.
I have no idea how to overhead squat or bench press.
Yeah, like they didn't know how much time to allot to these things or how many warm-up reps they would need, and all of a sudden they spent, you know, if it was 30 minutes, they spent 28 of them doing everything but overhead squatting. You're like, fuck, I got to do 2 overhead squats at 400 pounds in 10 seconds. Like, how do I get there? This is an opportunity for you to start figuring out like what kind of jumps you can make, and like how long these things actually take to warm up, and how long you need between reps so that you can execute again at the same level or a higher level. Like, this is another data collection point. And I think a lot of athletes might just see this and go, cool, I get to go heavy today, and not realize this can then inform later parts of the season where you get asked to do one of these random lifts and you want to know exactly what kind of jumps you're going to make, how much rest you need in between, and like what things tend to let you move better or give you a better performance on that day. This is an opportunity for you to collect more information on things that maybe don't happen as frequently as the back squats and the deadlifts.
This is a remote coaching tool that I used for a long time. And then the note that I made when that workout was announced was like, this could be really helpful for more people as a non-mandatory.
Yeah.
We got more sled work. The sled work, honestly, is very similar to the heavy days, just in that sleds move the needle. They just do a lot. Everyone knows that feeling. You don't have to put that much work in, and you can just tell what's happened to your body. But also this athlete IQ piece of, you show up to a competition and they're going to give you potentially the weight on the sled or how long it is, but the sort of elements of physics that make each sled situation so unique. You need to know when you start pushing a sled what your capabilities are, and it can completely blow up a workout, or it can, you might be more of a, an athlete that we call, a turtle, and it feels super heavy, but you can march with it for longer than you think you'd be able to. So we're keeping sled work in there, especially for semifinals and games athletes, basically year round, so that you can have enough different styles of a session to be like, okay, I know what this feels like. I know how long I can go for. I know how much rest I need in between. So it moves the needle a lot, which is like kind of number one for us. But then it's a really important athlete IQ tool if you use it, like, you guys sort of alluded to, being able to do that with the heavy days.
And I think the sled is kind of unique in a way that's almost like the strength application of a monostructural movement. It could be potentially this thing that because you don't have a display on the sled, you don't know how much the surface or the weight and all these factors that kind of play into how the sled feels, and like learning like when the sled feels like this, I do that. When the sled feels like this, I go like that. And knowing which gear to use is really valuable, because we watched a ton of athletes basically knock themselves out of the running at a semifinal because they didn't understand some of the way athletes don't understand how like an assault or an echo bike works. Like
Exactly like that.
yeah, and they don't understand that these things, like every stimulus has a particular gear based on like what's around it and how long the workout is and like what the objectives of the workout are. And just going blind and going, I'm going to push really, really hard every single time can cause you to eat a bunch of points or not get the points that you wanted to begin with. And all of a sudden, like you should have done really well in this workout, but your strategy sucked. And that's because you didn't think back to your old other sessions where you had a chance to figure out like, oh, a heavy sled, I got to move like this. And a lighter sled, I got to move like this. And a moderate sled like that. This is a really useful situation, and just know what the application is ahead of time, and then try to take whatever detailed notes you can in terms of like whether that's your heart rate, how your steps feel, how you hold the sled, arms extended or arms bent. It's a lot of data that can be collected here. And if you don't use this session to your advantage, don't be surprised when the torque sled comes back out and you try to sprint with it and you lose to everybody.
Yep. Last but not least, we have clean and jerk skill work for MFT athletes. That's not mandatory. So as we're sort of making that transition into semifinals prep, it's going to be a lot of clean and jerk complex work in semifinals prep. We just want to make sure that that bridge is created if you do struggle with connecting the movement together. It's going to be very similar to clean position work that you've seen from us in the past with split jerk added to it. So those are the lifts where an athlete can choose to make that part of their program with MFT. With the hatchet peaking lifts, this is going to be for any open athlete who needs to work on these weaknesses specifically as they come up. And all of these are going to be mandatory for quarterfinals athletes. We got big sets of thrusters. This is sort of one of those ones where you're like clapping and saying fuck you at the same time. We had really great feedback on our good old fashioned 3 sets of 20 with the thrusters last year. So you get 3 sets of 20 with your thrusters this year.
Enjoy them.
Just keep in mind, and the instructions will be in there, that there are going to be multiple instances of how many times you do these sets. So if your end all be all goal of how strong you could possibly be is the weight you choose for week 1, you're probably going to have a rough time in that session and then not be able to progress. So, get your sea legs under you in week 1, choose something that you know that you can do, and then adjust accordingly after that. Misfit sets, front rack lunges, a lot of lunging incorporated into the sport in the last few years compared to previous years. And it's one of those movements that can put you in the grave if you don't like it. So that will be just like MFT. And then we have Misfit sets of shoulder to overhead. This is just one of those things where same concept as the front rack lunges. The variable that you provide is the weight. So you're going to choose a weight that you can do 4 sets of 10 with, and that you can do more than 10 reps in that 5th set. It's going to be a little bit of guess and check work at the beginning, but again, you're going to get multiple opportunities to go through and work on the Misfit sets shoulder to overhead. So that's it. That's all of the lifting, essentially, for teens, masters, MFT on one side, and then Hatchet doing their peaking schedule. The sort of new thing that we haven't done in the past is, because phase 4 starts January 9th and then sort of ends during the open and quarterfinals, our retests are built in. They're already there. CrossFit's providing those. You're going to be tested over, hopefully, sort of a thoughtful arrangement of movements and time domains. And we're going to know sort of where you're at. You have a worldwide leaderboard compared to, sort of being on Discord. So it's going to be an opportunity for you to figure out, how my toes to bar, my double unders, and my handstand push-ups, and probably muscle ups and things of that nature. That's going to be provided. But how do we know where you are now? How do we know where you are when you start and what you need to work on? So what we decided to do is we decided to either use or rework workouts where you have a basis of reference for all of them. Now, your basis of reference could be, that's an old open workout that I did or I've done recently. Great. That's my basis of reference. You also have games.crossfit.com, open leaderboard, sort 2015. What are the top scores? What's my reference point here? This person got this score. Maybe I need to scroll down to 100th or 200th, whatever it is, where, normally wherever you slot in those workouts and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And that's going to be the case for all of them. So we do have straight up open workouts. We also have interval versions of open workouts. So there have been some in the past, like the clean and jerk toe to bar back in the day, where time kind of ran out on you a little bit before you could push one more round than what everybody got back then would have hurt a lot. So what we've done is we've added rest into it. And now you're going to be able to either be touch and go for longer, or there's no question about how fast your singles are, whatever it is, because you're going to get a little bit of rest. So you're going to be pushed into that category. And then we had a large number of athletes in the last chance qualifier last year, and I will apologize to them directly. But the last chance qualifier monostructural death workout with the wall balls and the double unders and the burpee box jump overs.
A beefy set of double unders in there.
It's here.
75.
That's too many.
It's unsafe. 75.
It's back.
That's unsafe.
So you all have remote coaches. Maybe they'll make you do it. Maybe they won't.
150 double unders.
If I'm your coach, you are doing it.
Oh, fuck.
Hunter, I don't know if you'll make Kelly go back to that.
Oh, yeah.
Twice.
I should have known. Okay, you're all doing it. You're all doing it. But all of these tests have a basis of reference to go into. The category that's sort of halfway between lifting and halfway between Metcons is our in-WOD lifting. Hunter, you want to explain what in-WOD lifting is and then what that looks like for this?
Yeah, I'll go pretty quick on it, but typically in-WOD lifting is we'll pick one lift for the entire training phase, and it'll also typically be percentage based. So if we were going to do an in-WOD deadlifting phase, the deadlift movement would be plugged into a normal interval, what you would see, instead of saying it's going to be 10 deadlifts at 225/155. It's going to be 10 deadlifts at 50 to 60% of your 1 rep max. And that gives the athlete the ability to personalize a little bit with respect to what type of athlete they are. Maybe they are like that turtle, like you said, who can deadlift, for days at a time if they go slowly enough and they need to get stronger or they need to be comfortable with heavier weights. And then same thing on the other end of the spectrum. For this phase though, because it is we are getting into that competitive season where, the open doesn't give a fuck about what percentage of a weight this is for you. So all of the lifts this phase are fixed, or all the weights rather are fixed. So basically we alternate weeks between touch and go clean and jerks and touch and go snatches, intended to be done as kind of the power variant like we would most likely see athletes have to do in the open. And the weights, I've built kind of like a range of weights, starting from the kind of lighter end, the 95/65 pound bar for the women in the snatch, building up to 155 and 105, because beyond that, athletes may be more inclined to do singles or whatever. But at a certain point, like athletes have to be comfortable cycling touch and go reps with those 2 barbell movements in particular. So, and then the same kind of thing with the clean and jerk, starting early in the phase with a lighter 115/80 pound barbell, building up to touch and go reps up at kind of the 175 and 115 range, where again, it's not like this is kind of heavy, this is kind of irritating. You have to know what that feels like too, whether it's this just the workout's so short that I don't have a choice to go touch and go. Maybe it's the end of a workout where I'm racing somebody and like the differences between, someone else setting the barbell down, and maybe I learned that I have it in the tank to hold on for a set of touch and go and get a little bit of an edge. But either way, all the weights in the phase are fixed. So, and it just alternates between snatching and clean and jerking. And there are a couple of little nuances as well that I've kind of installed in here. And it's basically like an intensity floor. So similar to how what you guys saw in the CrossFit Games for the Jackie Pro final, where the everybody, for the most part, everybody knows it's like, if you're doing Jackie, it's like, okay,
Dog the
how
row.
how slow do I need to row to still be able to do my thrusters and pull-ups unbroken with minimal transitions? And I really liked what Boz did and was just like, I don't give a fuck. Like how what your strategy is, like you're going to pay to play with kind of the minimum pace requirement. So
that's how we used to do Jackie in 2009. Like a moron.
Send it, see what happens.
I do. I mean, I like it. Learn to run, row, bike, swim hard and fast. So there's basically, there are some, you must complete the work in X amount of time, and you only get a 5-second transition between when you finish your last wall ball and when you have to pick up your barbell. And again, that's just because some of the workouts are written as like, hey, I want you to do max reps. It can be easy for an athlete to be like, oh, I'll sandbag the first 2 movements a little bit so that I can get max reps. And that's what I was looking to avoid. So you're not allowed to do that.
Fast twitch athletes that might love to cycle a barbell, but like that because then they do that and then they've bought themselves the opportunity to kind of put hands on knees for a second at the next movement. And this essentially takes that away from them. It's like, hey, you got to figure out what you can do and still hit the pacing requirements that I'm asking of you. And that's going to be more useful than like, sick, I can rip off a set of 15 touch and go at this weight, but then I need like 3 minutes of rest. Like that's not a valuable thing most often in our sport.
Yeah, and I think it gets to kind of the mantra of the open and quarterfinals time frame. It's like, it's no standing around season. It very rarely matters more about whether you do movements unbroken or not, and more about the fact that you need to be able to continuously move under fatigue to see what you're capable of. So that might have been a bad example because all of these are touch and go sets. But my point is just that you have to be comfortable getting hands on barbell, getting X amount of work done in X amount of time, and then still being comfortable enough to start the next movement or whatever it is. So
you're forcing that adaptation without letting athletes get lazy. I mean, like, sick, I did 100 or MFT asked for me, and then I can stand around and I did the one thing. It's like, no, like the whole body of work.
We've removed the game ability of the workout, the kind of the strategizing.
I can't wait for you guys to see the test. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's special.
I can't wait for him to see, like, I think it's week 5. I was writing the Instagram copy for it, and it was one of those gems that Hunter came up with. We were figuring out the right amount of reps for 2 different movements that we performed in the EMOM. I'm excited for you all to see that one.
Oh, it was the EMOM one?
Yeah, the one that you were like, I'm pretty sure you wrote, I'm going to try to kill them in this, is what I think you said.
I almost named it not Hunter's birthday because I got some shit about the Hunter's birthday workout, and Caroline was like, that was easy.
Sure was on your team.
I'm on your team, bro. Okay. I said that was the fucking hardest thing. I literally got 1 round in. I'm sitting on the GHD ready to start a second round. Caroline goes, kind of easy, huh?
Well, fair enough. I told followers they can come in for them. I did my birthday workout. I'm not fucking doing this one. Can't make me. Not fucking doing it.
Not doing it.
Not fucking leaving.
All right. So for most of our sort of off-season work, you're going to see a skill focus built into testing on a Metcon and on an interval. And the way that we get you better at that is we test it, and then you have skill session, and then it's back in a Metcon. Another skill session, it's back in a Metcon. And we follow a thoughtful progression through each one, sort of to get you to that place. The only nuance, again, is that the retest is going to be up to boss, basically. So we're going to have you, ready with a few different things here. Everything else is going to be in skill or sort of sprinkled throughout, but we are putting the finishing touches on, sort of those dedicated extra bias skill sessions. And sure, we have kipping handstand push-ups for the Metcon.
Yeah, I can tell you, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I were to guess of all the things that we've covered most in tip videos, handstand push-up has to be in the top 3. I don't know if you want to fact check me on that, but I think it is.
Handstand push-ups probably rope climbs too.
Yeah. So again, this is just one of those movements that can derail your season, kind of like we talked about. Like if you're not strong enough, you can't snatch that weight, you can't go further in the season. Handstand push-ups have been that gymnastics movement that have caused so much chagrin in the community because, they've changed the standard a little bit, but people don't typically train them correctly. And they're like, oh, I can do 100 in a row. And you see a video of it and you're like, none of those would count. And that's the reason why you're frustrated in the competitive season is you don't do them the right way. So we, dedicated a lot of time and resources to our YouTube channel to help people get better at this movement because it can be the reason why you don't qualify. this workout in particular, 15.4, was the first year that they introduced the box and like the tape line with the wrist and everything. And there are a handful of athletes that just literally had their season ruined because of this movement. Now, what I'm going to recommend is that you stick with the most recent version of the standard, and that would be kind of how you set the baseline for this. But we looked at this workout and said, where would an MFT athlete get now? Try to figure out that volume and then kind of work backwards there. So basically, you're going to establish your first week, which is, probably getting around to somewhere between 21 and 27 handstand push-ups. If you think back on the workout, it was a ladder. And then you'll get an opportunity to start with a smaller skill-based session where you should be more focused on moving beautifully and fast through the reps so you actually get better at the handstand push-ups rather than just doing it to do it. And then try to take that, a very similar amount of volume the following week and go, all right, now that there's a little bit more intensity, I'm breathing heavy, there's some muscular interference, can I move the same way in the following week? And it just kind of follows a progression where it's a pretty manageable set to begin with, and it kind of builds and builds and builds to, what our hope and dreams are for this is that by the end, what your standard set used to be is like half of where you end up at the end. So like if your standard set was 10 handstand push-ups in week 1, that's what you could do every single time, no matter how tired you are. Hopefully by the end, you're almost doubling that. And that again, allows you to have more capacity, more confidence so that a big chunk of handstand push-ups get thrown your way. You know how to attack it and you know what to think about as you're moving through it so that you're prepared for whatever comes your way.
I need 2 minutes to test my theory. So we recently had a meeting where I pitched the idea of teaching you guys skills on a podcast and was quickly told that we were going to make it into a video. So the video is going to exist. But this handstand push-up thing, getting the point across is so challenging that I want to try a different medium, just super quick. And you guys let me know in Discord if you're like, bro, what are you talking about? Thanks for the video, Ted. Or, hopefully it's both, right? So the drill is you kick upside down and you load as if you're about to do a handstand push-up. You guys can picture yourself doing this, right?
Yeah.
See what you look like upside down.
Great.
I want you to recreate that position right side up. Can you picture yourself?
I feel like I look like one of those tiki boys.
Yeah, because your feet are together,
torch.
right?
Yeah, my feet are together.
Let's just say it looks something like the bottom of a squat, but your hands are at head level. You don't have quite as much movement to get a barbell overhead if you were going to do like a thruster.
Okay.
You're down there. You got a barbell in your hands. I want you to open your hip instead of standing up. What does that look like?
Fall forward in your face.
You fall backwards, wouldn't you?
The bar would fall behind you, but you'd fall forward.
Look like you're doing the limbo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
Is that an efficient way to do a thruster?
I got to test this theory.
I'm not sure if
I don't know. I gotta test
anyway,
it.
so I don't know.
No, is the answer. No.
The majority of the CrossFit community gets into the most loaded position that they possibly can and throws their hips horizontally off the wall to get their first handstand push-up. How can I create the most energy possible to heave and get myself my first handstand push-up? We are Larry's to the nth degree at the affiliate level. We love your first handstand push-up. It means just as much to us, I swear to God, as going to the CrossFit Games. If you want to do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, that whole concept has to be erased from your mind. You worked your ass off. You got yourself to that point. We see athletes at the highest level who load properly, have a good, sort of balance in their way to where they're at, but they throw their hips off the wall and then are so skilled that they can open their knees and their ankles and sort of catch themselves midair and go back towards the wall. Those are the same people who might be good at pressing. They might be good at, your thrusters and your push press and just can't seem to figure out what's going on. Happens to athletes a lot when they have bad shoulder mobility and they're going to be further away from the wall. Now, go back to you're the tiki guy and you're in that position and you just stand up. Your knees open. So the angle between your lower leg and your upper leg is fully open. You just stood up. And then your hips just kind of come through because you're standing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a thruster. Is that an efficient way to put the weight up overhead?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On the wall,
Ted, help me with this one.
on the wall, your butt is supporting that position, so you're balanced. And if you kick your legs up, they will take your butt off the wall, and you will be close to the wall, and you can repeat this over and over and over. So if you are I don't know what to call it, auditory listener, you're welcome. There will be a video
learner.
coming
Everyone's
on
an
common
auditory
faults
listener.
in every open or quarterfinals style gymnastics movement. But I wanted to try something different because we've taught it for years and we still see it. You're trying to go up and your momentum is going out and around and up. If you want to go up, kick up. It's going to feel weird at first. 2 steps, 1 step back, 2 steps forward.
Yes.
All right. End rant. Hunter, interval test with toes to bar.
Yeah. Toes to bar for this phase, rather than so Sherb went with a more volume progression based approach, which I think is perfectly fine. For toes to bar this phase, I went with more of a stimulus based approach. What's
that all about?
You have an interval version of what year was that? 13.4.
Yeah,
so the climb the ladder of clean and jerk and toes to bar, where most athletes, at least competitive, were in the neighborhood of at least, is it 100 reps total? Like
It's
50,
more- it's a little more than that.
50
Yeah,
of
it's
each.
like
There was like
one
no
teens.
parity though.
It's like
went down through that
very
workout.
tight. So it wasn't necessarily a volume toes to bar sort of thing. It was more of for me at least, it was a grip fatigue sort of thing. And I feel like toes to bar they either come in those big beefy sets where it's just like grip fatigue to the max, or it shows up in really these baby small sets and it's more of that cardio stimulus with the double under toe to bar thruster workout. That was like your second favorite open workout behind burpees and deadlifts, but
Behind all of them.
in the similar structure, Metcon skill. Essentially what I did was just tried to match the stimulus of what was what just occurred as far as the timing worked out. So week 1 has the clean and jerk and toes to bar test, so a very grip intensive muscular overload element. Week 2, the skill work is doing some toes to bar after holding on to kettlebells. So a small amount of grip fatigue before, and then see what your toes to bar capacity is. And it just kind of alternates back and forth like that, whether it's a cardio feel where we are going to ask you for big unbroken sets of toes to bar, because that's kind of the way that we define cardio, or maybe it is like extreme metabolic fatigue where it's just like my lungs are bleeding but I have to go do toes to bar. So more of a stimulus kind of based approach, and you should take advantage of like getting an idea for how that feels. Toes to bar is a pretty common movement in the open, I think largely because of its accessibility to a pretty wide range of athletes. But knowing what different types, what going into a set of toes to bar when you're breathing really hard, or when your arms don't work, or when your midline doesn't work, like what does that feel do to you? And then therefore, hopefully you take notes and identify how to mitigate that, or at least assuage it enough to keep moving in an open or a quarterfinal workout.
Assuage.
Like that.
I like that. And this is also, I think, an opportunity for athletes to realize how valuable accessory work is. For those of you that have been following along with phase 3, revamp the accessory work. One of the things that's a principal factor in there is grip strength, and like how that applies to your confidence and how that applies to all your movements. Have you been following along with that? You're going to probably be more prepared for this session. And if you haven't been doing it because you've been thinking like, man, I really got to hit all those rowing intervals, or I got to hit all these squats, or I have to do my third Metcon for the day, you might be better off kind of shoring up your armor with making sure you're addressing the little things like your squat mobility and your midline strength holding sandbags, or in this example, like have you been doing your farmer's holds and now you're better prepared for something like this? Because like you just said, the toes to bar are easy until they're not, and you want to know what that reason is. And if it's something as simple as like, I should have just spent another 5 minutes at the end of my session holding on to dumbbells or kettlebells, that's a pretty low barrier to entry to getting better at a movement that gets tested very often.
You can also get a little desensitized to forearm burn.
Yeah, how bad it feels. Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people that only fry out with their grip and sort of can always rely on their hip flexors, go hold on to some really heavy dumbbells for a while and realize your grip's a little bit better than you think it is. That feeling is
the grip fatigue.
gnarly.
I feel like I wrote something a long time ago. I was like, what's the commonality of the shittiest workouts? And there's always a grip element where it's just like, maybe it's not complete failure, but it's like, God, my forearms are so fucking pumped right now. And I'm like, I can't even do wall balls with my forearms feeling the way that I do.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Yep.
Also, something you didn't just say in your thing, but I thought you might say is that if you're someone that struggles with grip work, or anything type of hold.
Sure.
Or
Why'd you think I was going to say that?
Sure.
I don't know. Just thought you were. But one of the things that we found in the past with these type of things specifically is that you can honestly trick yourself into doing them for longer periods. Find a buddy to do them with. Just fucking shoot the shit. Talk about anything.
It's the Max Bragg trick. He couldn't do a 10-second wall sit. And then if you told him a story, you could do it for like 4 hours.
So like maybe that would benefit you when it comes to some of these things. Like if you're someone that doesn't like that because it's uncomfortable, you don't like the way that feels in your forearm, like find a buddy, do it with them, chat them up. And all of a sudden, what could have been a accumulation of 2 minutes of farmer's holds turns into 20 minutes of farmer's holds. I don't know if you want to do 20 minutes, but
don't
get my point.
Yeah. Follow the rules.
Might do it.
All right. Last but not least, for MFT teens and masters, we still have our aerobic bias focus and anaerobic bias focus. Aerobic is CrossFit. It's your rowing and double unders and burpees and box jump overs and things of that nature. The periods of time that you're going to be doing them and the rest periods associated are very similar to the type of intervals that you would see, whether it's just running or rowing or biking or mixed machine. We need very similar data, probably more importantly on these types of movements than we do just on monostructural. So still going to get, it's not long and slow. It's kind of long and not that slow.
Pretty terrible.
Yep. But you really need to understand the relationship that these movements have to each other. And well, I know since this is a 5-minute window that I can row at, a 140. And then you find out that that's not necessarily true if you're doing double unders or, burpee box jump overs or whatever with it. So those relationships are super important. And we're going to give you a bunch of opportunities to figure out how to sort of strategize
I think the CrossFit bitch work is cool because we talk a lot about the value in machines and the fact that you have a very objective display right in front of you. And with a Metcon where, the variability and the speed of movements and how they make you feel is kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum. With the CrossFit bitch work, one, I don't know if it's intentional or otherwise, but like a lot of the CrossFit bitch work movements, whether it's wall balls, double unders, even like burpees and burpee box jump overs or box jump overs to a certain extent, all have kind of that similar repeatable cadence to them. You only wall ball so fast, you only double under so fast, unless you very deliberately speed up or slow down your rope. And that can start to bridge the gap a little bit in athlete IQ from I have the full objective heads-up display of my monitor. I have 0 heads-up display in my thruster pull-up Metcon, but in the CrossFit bitch work, I have a blend. I have a pretty good blend of not only a machine with that objective display, but movements that are generally done at one speed, depending on obviously a little bit of how you're feeling, but in a given set of 20 wall balls, like 20 wall balls takes the same amount of time, no matter how dog shit you feel. Yeah. Assuming you do them all.
What you just said is the exact reason why I didn't let him get on the rower for this test. I wanted 3 movements without that information. And then we let him have the rower a little bit more and we mix it in to try to figure that out. But last year it was very clear that if you didn't know how to do round 1 with round 2 coming, you were going to be in trouble during the last chance qualifier.
Only 2 rounds though.
Yeah,
just get through that first one real quick.
Fucking let her rip. Anaerobic bias focus. Rowing cube test. Sure, you currently have the high score on this.
I think it's the one that did it. That's why.
That's fine. What are we chasing?
I still think 400 is the gold standard on this test, even on a rowing machine. I do think that's going to be a little bit trickier.
Do you know your exact score? Can you look it up?
373.
I thought you might.
But yeah, I think I started somewhere around 95 in round 1, then maybe like 92 in round 2, then 90, then maybe like 92 again in the 4th round. This is again an opportunity for you to figure out, can you hold a really terrible pace? And like when I thought about this piece, I thought back to 2019 with the rowing and wall balls, and obviously I'm doing a significantly bigger chunk. But like if you go back and think about that workout, you spent a majority of that workout on the rowing machine with a small break for wall balls. So like learning what your pace can be when you have to get over and over and over again, how valuable that would be to your season. Like, rowing is going to be that one machine that gets tested in the opening quarterfinals according to the equipment list. So it's like, do you know what cadence you can hold? Do you know how big a fall off do you have? Do you know at what point during your rest interval did you feel like you were recharged, or how many rounds could you do before you feel like you emptied the tank? Like this is all valuable data for doing this test and then taking the information from this test into the season.
What was your first round?
95, I think.
Then dropped off.
I think it was 95, 92,
average
92.
Average of 93.
Yeah.
Poof, 1,500 cals an hour for.
That's the gold standard. I think I was in the like 14, 30 range, which again, it's a handful of calories per round off, but I do think someone can do a 400 on this.
And that would
you need to hold over 1,400 the whole time to beat Sherb. Sherb averaged 1,395.
Yeah, there you go.
But you need to hold 1,500.
15 to get 100 to get 400.
Yep.
Yes.
I think it's the hardest. Ladies,
machine. That would be about 320, which is like a 1,200 cals an hour.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
1,200 cals an hour.
Would not be enjoyable, but
fuck.
Yeah.
For the ladies score.
That's the first one we did, and it sucks because it's your whole body. Oh. You don't really get like the ski one. Obviously, you breathe heavy. You have localized muscle fatigue, though. Bike erg, localized muscle fatigue. There's no localized.
Body.
There's no localized muscle fatigue. It's
localized to your body.
I honestly say I've done 3 out of the 4 cube tests. I've done run, row, and I've done bike. I've not done ski, and running and rowing were far worse than biking. And don't get me wrong, biking sucked too, but
you didn't
exactly
ski? I thought you skied upstairs one day.
No, I haven't done the ski cube test. Like Caroline did it with me. I did the bike that day, but like I would definitely agree that like when it's more full body and it's gonna tax your arms, your legs, and your breathing, those are the ones where you're gonna have the most benefit from the test.
It's the gas equivalent of the
the
cube test pieces.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It's fun. It's pretty gnarly. We both like we were testing it and we were going over it and we sort of just looked at each other at the end. We were like, "Yep, that's it.
Did it.
Yep, that's it.
This works."
That was the like final nail on the coffin of they're doing cube tests to get into that. So yeah,
that's it in a nutshell.
Phase 4, quarterfinals prep.
Nice 90-minute nutshell.
January 9th at misfitathletics.com. I cannot stress enough for our hatchet athletes that are trying to peak for open and quarterfinals. We've said in the past that you need to look at your week of programming and sort of circle your nemesis and, get pumped up and play the right music and listen to Slipknot in your car before and headbutt your friend. And we have decided early on in this program what those are. It's every day. It's that one, conditioning piece that's there to start and then peaks up. You need to hone in on that and you need to really try to take yourself to that place that you would in online competition, because your ability to handle volume is just not going to be put to the test during this period of time. Your ability to show up and knock a single workout out of the park is as important as it gets. And that's why one of the main reasons why we start with such low volume is we want you to bring everything to the party. We want that super long warm up. We want to know, what sort of activation drills you need to do. We want you to know what a cool down is that actually works and doesn't leave you feeling like you were put in a grave that next day. So, your opponent that you've been circling all year, whether it's, one a day or one a week, we've done that for you at the beginning of this program. And our hope is that you can sort of build the habits that it takes to attack every single piece like that. And then, when you go through a peaking phase, one of our peaking phases, you're going to end up having the best quarterfinals that you've ever had when you come out the other side, if you can listen to sort of how to attack it.
I'm going to steal a page out of Hunter's book for this, so sorry to sit there. Your final thoughts. If you've been on the wrong program for a long time, or maybe you've been trying to do MFT for a while with the goal of like, if I do this enough times, I'll slowly try to get myself up to speed so I can compete with everybody else. But your Super Bowl's quarterfinals this year and you want to do your best there, this is the opportunity to change gears and say, I'm going to do hatchet for a phase and see if I can knock quarterfinals out of the park and do better this year relative to my fellow competitors than I did last year. So if this is like a last kind of a call to action, if you're someone that's maybe still flirting with which program's appropriate for me, but which part of the season is most important for you, and that's quarterfinals, this is a nod to go hatchet for the next, 8 weeks. Get yourself really ready for that so that when the open goes through, you crush all those workouts and you're fully prepared to hammer quarterfinals at the end of the phase.
My final thoughts are something that I do for athletes that I work with who have a very specific goal of, typically quarterfinals, semifinals, or, in instances, games, is to this is the time of year where you start logging things and making like a little checklist of things like, what was my sleep quality like was I hydrated? What is my like a win and a learn point from each training piece? For Kelly, we had like during semifinals prep, it was like, you know, you circle the Metcon. We called it the red cell of death. It was like, here's the one, like that's the workout that you need to seriously dial in on this week. And like, if that's the only thing you do all day, then that's fine. But a little journal of, you know, how I felt, again, like a win point, a goal that I have for this Metcon. You know, what did I do well? What can I learn from? Basically starting to take those notes and make it a little bit, taking it a little bit more seriously, kind of the GoPro kind of idea that you talked about early in the podcast. But for Hatchet athletes, now's the time to start doing that. And again, just if you know what will happen to you if you put all of your eggs into the basket in 7 weeks. And we don't know unless you do it.
Did we do it?
Yeah.
Did it.
All right, ladies and gents, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the podcast, and thank you to our show sponsors, properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit, sharpentheaxecode.com. Use your favorite athlete code, misfitathletics.com. Get signed up before January 9th. You will get 2 weeks for free. You'll get a really good opportunity to sort of digest how we program, what it looks like. Everybody gets that full week in advance now on our website. You'll be able to sort of click through Masters and Teens and MFT and Hatchet and see where all that good stuff is at. See you next week.